According to research, adults who have a larger waist size have a greater risk of dying than those who have a smaller waist size. In fact, researchers found decreased life expectancy for both men and women who have extended waistlines. Often those stats are independent of other factors like age, body mass index, smoking, drinking, physical activity, things of that nature. So the question is, where do African Americans fall when it comes to averages in terms of waist size? Well, the data is pretty interesting, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, as we did with height and weight, we are going to follow the same categories present on the National Health Statistic Report for the 2015-2016 year, which is the most recent year available. We're going to follow the same data. It also follows the same 5 Hispanic origin groups: non-Hispanic whites, non-Hispanic blacks, non-Hispanic Asians, Hispanics, and Mexican Americans. Okay, so why is this important? A bigger waist can point to some significant red flags when it comes to health. One of the main things that it points to is excessive abdominal fat. This excessive fat is often the cause of a number of health problems. Some of these conditions include type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, high blood pressure, and coronary artery disease. So now let's take a look at the average waist sizes for both male and female within all of these Hispanic origin categories. When it comes to non-Hispanic white men in the 2015-2016 survey time frame, the men had the largest average waist size when it comes to men. The white male average was 40.6 inches. Meanwhile, the average waist size for women was smaller at 38.4 inches. Thusly, the difference between the male and female waist sizes was about negative 2.2 inches, meaning 2.2 inch difference. The women were smaller than the men. Now, when we enter into the non-Hispanic black category, we find that the men in this category had the second smallest average waist size of the men of all categories. Now, in contrast to that, the women in the non-Hispanic black category had the largest waist size of all the racial categories. And in terms of numbers, the black men had a waist size, an average waist size of 39.1 inches. Now, the females had an average waist size of 40.2 inches. So this means the difference between the male and female waist size was 1.1 inches, a positive 1 inches. What this means is that the total difference between the waist sizes between the men and the women was 1.1 inches, but the females in the non-Hispanic black origin group actually averaged a larger waist size than the men. Now, it's important to note that this was the only Hispanic origin category in which the women had a larger waist size than the men did. So let's take a look at the other 3 Hispanic origin groups. Non-Hispanic Asian waist size, the smallest average waist size amongst men, belong to the non-Hispanic Asian category. In this category, men averaged a waist size of 36 inches. When it came to the women, the average waist size was 33.7 inches. So as a result, the Asian group had the largest difference between male and female waist size, with the average female waist being 2.3 inches smaller than the average male waist. So in comparison between the Asian and the black group, the Asian group had smaller waist sizes on average than non-Hispanic blacks did. The black men followed closely. They were the second smallest waist size average of all the racial groups. On the other hand, black women had the largest waist size of all the racial groups. And this was the only category, again, in which the women had a larger waist size than the men did. Now, before we move on, again, I can't overstate how important this is. Seems trivial at first, but when you consider these facts, along with the information for height and weight, and when you'll see as far as the body mass index, again, that picture that is painted is a very, very interesting one. So I'd encourage you to check out all the videos, gather all the information, and decide for yourself what it means. Now, the next group is the Hispanic group. And in this category, the average waist size for men is 40.3 inches. For women, the average circumference is only slightly smaller at 39.4 inches. So as a result, the difference between male and female waist size in the Hispanic group is only 0.9 inches. And as with every other category, whether it be height, weight, whatever we're looking at, the Mexican American group is extremely similar to that of the Hispanic group. It almost didn't make sense for them to separate the two out in the surveys, but that's what they did. So the data for the Mexican American group is as follows. The Mexican American group had the smallest difference in waist size during the 2015-2016 year. It was almost identical to the Hispanic number. The average waist size for Mexican American men was 40.4 inches. The average waist size for women in this group was 40 inches. So these figures made the difference between male and female waist size in the Mexican American group, the smallest of all the racial groups. There was only a 0.4 inch difference between the two. In other words, the women had an average waist size that was only 0.4 inches smaller than the men. So as a recap, when we look at the average waist size between black men and black women and compared to other racial groups, we see that there are a couple of anomalies. One of which being that this non-Hispanic blacks are the only group in which the average waist size for the female is larger than the average waist size for the male. And then again, also the average waist size for the female is the largest of all the racial groups. So as we dig into more information, within these stats, within the National Health Statistic Report, it really just opens the door for more and more questions like, why do these numbers look the way they do? Is it a genetic thing or is it a lifestyle thing? That rabbit hole goes pretty deep. It gets to be a pretty interesting conversation. But again, as always, if it was educational for you, if you learned something new like I did, please make sure you give the video a thumbs up and share it with anyone else that you think might be interested. On that note, that does it for this video. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care of yourself, family. Peace.